Here tonight to talk about Decadent Drinks, and we're really lucky to have Julie Hamilton with us. Julie, we were talking before. Wear many hats in your new firm, but not really the traveling brand ambassador hat that you had previously. So what is your title now with Decadent Drinks?
So my title with Decadent now is Sales and Brand Manager.
Mm-hmm. So
So
you're the
quite
person
different.
who's got to sell.
Say
Sell.
again.
You're the person who's got to sell.
That's it. Yes, yes. But I have to say, not a tough sale. These
No.
whiskies, it's all very nice. All very nice
Now,
liquid I get to work with, so it's good.
now, how long have you been in the whiskey industry now? Because I only know of two of your previous gigs. I know when you were at Elixir Distillers, you were also at the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society before that. But how long have you been in the whiskey industry now?
So, and on a part-time basis and more of a hobby basis, for about 20 years. So Glasgow's Whisky Club, we set up 20 years. It was our 20th anniversary this year. I'm one of the directors of Glasgow's Whisky Festival as well, which this year we are 14, I think. Yes, 14.
14 years.
I genuinely forget how long that's been going now, but yeah, so I did these things alongside a job. I worked in local authority, so I worked for education services for a very long time, and then I got the opportunity to leave that and start a job with Elixir Distillers. That was in 2019, and came through the insanity that was all the lockdowns and the COVID world, and I had a very opportune chance. I was neighbours with Angus at Whisky Live Paris in 2022, and we got chatting at that point, and here I am. Left Elixir Distillers in at the end of December, and started at the beginning of January with Decadent Drinks last year. So that's me. I've just passed my 1 year anniversary with this company.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's going well.
That's good. Well, and I mean, I think when I first knew of Decadent Drinks, it was just Whisky Sponge, and then it's become more than just Whisky Sponge. And I think we have an opportunity to talk about a little bit of that as we go here. And we've got 7 whiskeys to go through. And Harmony and Sean and I are here to add some color and tasting notes as we go. But where do you want to start us off with here? I know we've got a whiskey, but do you want to do a little intro? What shall we do?
I can do. So I'll start by saying I'm not a lover of PowerPoint presentations, but I'm very aware that it's 2 a.m. here, and that at any given time I might start to slow down slightly. So I've got PowerPoint slides so that we can keep it interesting at least. So you need to bear with me while I get this going, to get the slideshow going, I think. Now, how do I do that? Hopefully that won't run too fast. So Decadent Drinks, our company, has been going since 2020. We are a small independent bottler. We bottle not only whiskey, we bottle rum, cognac, and Armagnac as well. So far, it has aspirations for other things, but for now, it's the 4 spirits that we bottle. So when the company began in 2020, Angus and our other director, Ian, had been hobby bottling, if you like, in 2019. And it took off. It was quite successful. Angus at the time was writing a satirical blog called the Whisky Sponge, which I'll come on to talk about in a minute. But just now, we have 3 brands. So we have the Sponge verse. So Whisky Sponge then expanded to the Cognac Sponge, Armagnac Sponge, Rum Sponge. We have notable age statements and Equinox and Solstice. So the Whisky Sponge. Angus was writing the Whisky Sponge for a long time, and it was his he described it as being his alter ego. So he had the satirical blog, he could poke fun at the whiskey industry, get to say the things in tongue in cheek and be quite humorous about it all. A nickname that was coined at a whiskey dinner in France quite some time ago. I'll let you work out whether it was because of he was absorbing all the knowledge or whether he was absorbing all the whiskey that he was called the Whisky Sponge. But as I say, 2019 decided to do a bit of hobby bottling side project with Ian, and then they decided that the Whisky Sponge would be the flagship of Decadent Drinks. So it was, I see this is why I don't use these things, because it puts me off. So they started, that became the flagship brand for the company. So it started with Whisky Sponge. It started with a cask of Glenmurray back in 2020. So notable statements came along. The concept behind this brand is that it's a celebration of what has happened in the lifetime of that spirit. So you can see in the picture there, we've got a 7-year-old Ben Nevis, and we've got a 30-year-old blended whisky. So the 30-year-old was actually what they launched the product with. We've gone from 7-year-old whisky, we've got a 58-year-old Armagnac, we've currently got a 50-year-old. We've got coming up in the foreseeable future a vatted grain. So just a celebration of what spirits do in casks. So whether it be 7 years old and the magic that happened in 7 years to this Ben Nevis compared to 58-year-old liquids. For me, certainly, I'm happy to say that that's not been within my lifetime. Other ones have. But so this really takes us on to the first run, if everybody's happy, just to get started. So the first whisky that we're going to have is from the Notable Age Statements range. So as I say, this is a celebration of these liquids. Now, this is actually, it's 17-year-old blended malt, but in actual fact, the sum of parts of this liquid is a 22-year-old cask of fresh sherry butts of blended malt. We purchased it as already blended whisky. So we'll know from other independent bottlers that there's a lot of sherried blended whisky on the market. It came from Edrington, a variety of vintages, and there's a variety of liquids that you'll see a trend of that were available to buy at a certain time. Now, it's surmising to say, but it was round about the time that we would have been doing the refurb and the build at Macallan Distillery, and it could well have been that was one of these sales to raise some capital. It could have been projects that we were no longer wanting to take forward. So you'll see on the market there's an Orkney products, there's a Speyside, sometimes they've got a cheaper little M written next to it from Macallan. Blended malts was a thing that came out. So Angus wanted to, his passion is Highland whisky, Highland style malts, particularly the west of Scotland, which I'll come on to talk about later on. But he picked out and selected a fresh sherry butt of Baltimore, which is the 17-year-old component of this. And that was giving us the opportunity to have something a little bit different from all the other blends that are out there just now. Mm-hmm. So 53%, I love this drum at 53%. And I was quite genuinely telling myself that I wasn't going to drum around at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I'll have a little bit of this one. So
it's quite reminiscent of a certain large Speyside distillery that's partially subterranean in
Yes. Yes. But I mean, that stock was blended stock, so it's not any one given. And I
Right.
suppose you can think about Edrington, they've got Glenrothes, Macallan, Highland Park. But then there are swaps that happen, there are, trades, different things. So really we have no real definitive answer to what's in the blended element of this.
Yeah.
Other than it was a fresh sherry butt, and that one was from 2001.
Doug is wanting to see the blending records, which is probably not something Edrington is willing to disclose, it's safe to say.
No, I doubt that. I doubt that very much, yeah. And not only will they not give them to us, I'm pretty sure they won't give them to whoever it was that sold it to us as well.
Of course not.
We're probably a person away from the original. So the tasting notes that I've got on all of these slides tonight are genuinely Angus's take on what these things are. So when we are producing the entries for our website, or when we're producing product sheets or information for our customers, these are the tasting notes that we use. But I think this one is actually pretty bang. I normally do agree with this tasting notes. But just that lovely tobacco, chocolate, rich, and for me, sherry whiskies, I'm always a bit wary that it's going to be just, too dirty or just a little bit sulphury or a bit rubbery. And this isn't. This is just lovely balanced, the two delightful old sherry.
Yeah, no, it's got a lovely profile, very reminiscent of like older school sherried Speyside whiskey.
Yeah.
And so kind of interesting. So taking the same parcel of blended malt stock that everybody else was working with and then just putting his own twist on it rather than just bottling it as is.
Yeah. He does his attempt at all turns is to produce something that doesn't exist anywhere else. Which I suppose is right enough that it doesn't exist, because to my knowledge, no one has blended the 22-year-old's blended malt with a single cask of Altmore. And the ABV can make all the difference as well, which we'll come on to talk about later on when we get into another notable statement. But yeah, does anyone have any thoughts?
Yeah, Harmony or Sean, either of you guys want to chime in on this one?
It's very sherried for me. Like it's it's not a bad whiskey, but it's a little too sherried, and I'm kind of losing the whiskey in this one for me. But I do like the chocolate notes that I get on it and the dark fruit. But yeah, I wish it was a little bit more barley structure in there.
Okay. Sean?
I love how fruity the sherry is. It definitely leans like more to the one side than the other. At first sip on the palate, I could have swore I got a little touch of smoke on there, which was kind of interesting. Second sip, not quite as much, but I'm not going to deny that it's there quite yet. I'm gonna say that Altmore is probably on the short list of distilleries I know the least amount, so I can't really pick anything about that on there whatsoever.
Sean, it's also the distillery that I believe the boutique guys had to create a story for because it was so boring. That's the one with the Megalodon fighting a velociraptor on the deck of a cargo ship while an oil rig burns in the background. So
totally, I remember that. Right, that's wicked.
Yeah. But yeah, Sean, you're not wrong. Like the fact that you would have a little maybe Highland Park in the blended malts makes sense.
I'm like you, Sean. I get it in the initial sip. I get initial nose, initial sip. I get a little whiff of smoke in the background, and then you start to look for it. It dissipates into being other things, other flavors.
Yeah, Jeff caught the smoke as well too, and Thirst Responder J. That's amazing. Dark chocolate, tiny earthy bitterness. So some other good notes in there. It's a great starting dram. Also, like relatively speaking, Julie, I know I said we weren't going to discuss prices beforehand, but I shared the link with people. They can find it themselves. 220, not a bad price for 17-year-old sherry cask whiskey, especially that profile. Like that's a softer sherry profile. So yeah, nice little starting dram for everyone there tonight.
Yeah. A little palate, warm it up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you want to, does this lead us into the next one, or what's, where are your slides going to take us, Julie?
So the slides are going to take us for the next one into the very next drum. So this is our first whiskey sponge of the tasting. So this is Candlekitty, which is 12 years old. This one is Whisky Sponge edition 78. So the edition numbers that we have, Angus's aspiration has always been that we would have 100 whiskey sponges, and then we started to branch off with 73A and 73B and different A's and B's, and then we've branched off. We've got different Orkney sponge, Islay sponge, Whisky Sponge has just materialised as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces to the sponge there. But this one is Candlekitty. So this one for me was a tough one for selling, because I had to divide this between all of my customers, and that was a tough call. So we're not permitted to use Clynelish on the label. I'm not allowed to tell you that it's Clynelish written down on the label, but I'll always tell you if I know the answer. So Candlekitty there's a cat on the label of Clynelish, and you'll always get a little waxiness in the mouthfeel of Clynelish. So this is the name that we adopted. So a little cat sitting staring out of the window. I'm quite sure there'll be. Actually, I must see if I do have. I'm going to see if I had inspiration for the label, but I don't think I do.
So, I mean, am I wrong in seeing that it looks like one of the windows the cat is looking out is like a cemetery? Is that? Does anyone?
love it.
It looks like a city.
Well, that's what I thought at first, but then I thought those actually look more like tombstones. But anyway, a little mystery in there. There's some bright.
I'm just going to look and see if I've got inspiration, because he sometimes tells us what the inspiration for his brain is. Not always.
Yeah. Well, it's malty. It's definitely got that waxy profile. It's a little on the farmy side, I think, as well. Sean, why don't I kick it off with you while Julie's doing some research? What do you think about this Candlekitty?
I'm super digging how barley forward it is. It's really more like it's barely touched by barrel, it seems. It's such a spirit-driven dram. I really love that. I gotta honestly, like, we have had access to so little from this distillery in the last like 5 years or so. It's almost jarring to be able to revisit such a kind of a cool naked expression like this. It's really neat.
Yeah. So this was matured in a refill barrel. So it would have been bourbon at some point in its life, but when we're making reference to it being a refill barrel as opposed to a first or second fill bourbon barrel, then that's an indication that it's been used a couple of times. But I think that gives that lovely distillate character with the whiskey when it's been in refill woods like that, and only 12 years as well, which is interesting. 57.1 is one of our ABVs that we enjoy drinking whiskey at Decadent Drinks. So there are a few. 100 proof is one of them. So you can see the bottom left window pane, the reference to 100 proof. And also the bottle that the candle is in the picture was a previous bottling of Candlekitty, excuse me, which, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a sister cask. I'm not 100% sure. Before my time. But just a lovely example of Clynelish, I think.
It probably would have been like that number plus a letter if this was a sister cask, I'm thinking. Because isn't that what they do most times?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It just depends. Sometimes we leave it. If we do the letters, it's because they've been bottled side by side.
Mm. Well,
Um,
my quick 2 cents on this. I love how fresh it is. It definitely is barley floored, that waxy tone and honey's there, but it's like fruity and floral at the same time. There's this lovely floral undertone to it. Like it's very, very fresh and approachable for a 12-year-old whiskey at 57.1. Harmony, did you want to chime in?
Yes, this is like the barley I like, Julie.
okay.
I love barrels versus sherry finishes. The clean spirit, it's just beautiful. The kind of the waxiness is there, its signature. Tons of citrus for me, and it's almost got the oiliness of your, twisting the rinds of your citrus fruit, and I wouldn't say smoky, but it's got like that toastiness to it, that kind of hits.
A backbone, yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I like it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say this was one of my favourites. I didn't get to play with this one for very long. It disappeared very quickly out of my hands. So much so that I don't actually have a labelled bottle of this one. My label is just a handwritten tiny little label on a on a sample bottle. But yeah, Clynelish for me is just is up there in the top 10 distilleries. I just love the style, and particularly when it's been matured and resolded and you are getting that the distillate character. I think I'm like you, Harmony. I think the more barley forward, the more distillate forward, the better. The cask isn't interfering with that, so you're getting that beautiful texture. And for me, this one was really fruity. I know a tiny little bit floral as well, but this is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions on it?
No, just some comments. I know Doug said he loves naked Clynelish. Thirst
A good
response.
way to put it.
Honey Nut Cheerios, Sammy saying dusty nose, then peachy stone fruit on the palate, really good. Igor saying very old old Ainsley 12-year-old. So
Okay.
yeah, there you are. Great, yeah, great bottling, very fresh. Now, this is one of those ones we promised that if you're if you're taking part in tonight's tasting, you'll get an email tomorrow giving you a chance to buy one of these bottles and one other a little later in the lineup. Don't email me, wait till you hear from me, because I'm going to give everyone the same opportunity. But the reason we did that, as Julie said, is just because these were so rare and so hard to come by.
There comes a point where it's like, well, I suppose it's now my experience in 3 different independent bottlers where you are splitting a single cask across quite a few different markets. So when it's a refill barrel, it's going to be much less than we get from. So the very first one that we had, we've still got lots because it was 2 pretty high filled sherry butts that we blended together. Whereas this one, there was a lot less to go around, unfortunately, which is always a sadness. But anyway, you get the opportunity to taste it, which is lovely. It's nice. It's a nice one for me to come back to, actually, because I've not had this one for a while. Yeah. Are you ready to move?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. You ready? I don't want to rush anybody. So now we come on to, this is without doubt my top 2 Speyside distilleries, Glentauchers. So edition 78, we were asked for a project from La Maison de Whisky for their new creations catalogue for last year's releases. So they release a catalogue every year, and they do a lot of exclusive casks that they're bottling, exclusive bottles. So this is a combination of a first fill sherry butts and a first fill bourbon barrel of Glentauchers. So the sherry butt is from 2005 and the bourbon cask is from 2002. So the project that we did for La Maison de Whisky was actually just the sherry butts. So, and we bottled it at 17 years old, and it was beautiful, really lovely. Glentauchers, as I say, is one of the closest to my heart. Angus then combined the other part of the sherry butt that we didn't take, and combined that with a first fill bourbon barrel, and then put it back into root and took it up over the 18 years mark. And this, for me, the balance of the two cask types with this one, I just think are delightful. As I say, the Bloody Ginger Whiskey one was lovely, but it was definitely based on that. Shouldn't say that because I'm loud, but 53%, yeah, 18 years old. Glentauchers is a whiskey that you don't see bottled terribly often, a little bit like the Orkney. You'll see it bottled by independents. It's owned by Clynelish, and it's one of the main component malts that go into the Valentine's blends. Along with the second one, which is very close to my heart, which is the Glenburgie. I heard you mention earlier on, Andrew, that you've got a Glenburgie coming up in one of your next tastings. I just adore it, like particularly bourbon cask Glenburgie.
I'm more of a Milton Duff guy, but Glentauchers is really up there for me too. But yeah, all three of those distilleries really underrated. Sadly, not really given any love by Chivas, and when they did try to do that, they butchered it. So best that they leave independent bottlers.
But that's okay. That does leave it. It leaves it for us to get our hands on. So 53%. We'll reduce this ever so slightly to 53%. But this is just, as I said earlier on, that balance between the bourbon and sherry. Ordinarily, my preference is always bourbon for both of those distilleries, Milton Duff as well, for the three of them. However, I think even though first fill sherry butt, it's the younger of the two, so it's the 18-year-olds. Yeah, I just think it's very special.
It's got a lovely profile, very fruity. I love the nose is quite decadent, makes me think of like butter tarts and pecan pie. And then the palate, it has some of those same tones, but it's so soft, so fruity, so approachable. And I mean, you don't feel the alcohol in this at all. It's very, very drinkable. Harmony, I think it's your turn to go first this time. Or not.
Yeah, sure. I'm really enjoying this. It's got a ton of fruit up front, and the finish or the palate, the little bit of exhale is like Sunday morning preparing for church, and people are like polishing up their shoes. There's like that little cigarette, like tobacco in the air, like reminds me of my grandfather. There's so much fruit on this, like both bright like pears and apples, and also some like heavier dark fruits too. And it's really balanced nicely, and you get this like kind of marmalade skin finish on it as well. But like I get quite a lot of like vapors on the palate, which is nice.
Yes, I think that kind of softness that you get with Glentauchers is just. Yes, it leads on nicely from the Clynelish, that mouthfeel, that kind of big waxy mouthfeel that you get is just, I think it's tasteless. I'm glad you liked it, if I had that instance.
Sean?
Yeah.
Typically the last several like Glentauchers we've had and really enjoyed have all been like pure bourbon. This is a pretty nice breath of fresh air, so to speak. Like it's not that the sherry overtakes whatsoever. It's such a nice delicate balance of everything. But between the bourbon and the sherry, it gives me like that nice an old fashioned note with burnt oranges and bitters, and like but not too rich. It's almost like an old, I don't know. It's kind of weird, like an old fashioned if you used a continentally aged or like a non-Kentucky aged bourbon kind of thing. Like, it's quite excellent.
Just a touch of those things, like a touch of chocolate, a touch of like strawberry Twizzlers, but not a lot, just a trace.
I think for the very first time I tasted Glentauchers was a very long time ago. And my friend, who was actually the founder of our whiskey club, went on to work for Decadent, went on to work for service. And he brought along one night to our whiskey club this bag of delights, and it was just things in like unmarked bottles, and you know, just a little code on some of the labels, which are always a favourite. It's like a treasure trove. And he gave us Glentauchers, and for me, the mouthfeel and the flavours in it was really creamy, and I felt like there was a kind of milk chocolate, almost like a kind of chocolate milk, you know, like cooled down hot chocolate, but like chocolate, not quite milkshake, not thick, but yeah, and I've loved it ever since. And the only time I've really not enjoyed it is when it's been in really active sherries. I'm not a fan of it. That way, for me, bourbon cask is the way, but the combination, as I say, and even though the kind of competition between first fill sherry, first fill bourbon, I think has balanced out quite well. I think they've both been powerful enough to kind of meld together really nicely and balanced.
Well, yeah, this one's definitely got a nice balance to it. Lots of nice layers. I can see where you're going with Glentauchers and sherry. I think a lot of times it doesn't work well. Maybe the exception being some of the Gordon MacPhail casks, but even those get like they're so rich. They're like over the top. And most of my favorite Glentauchers will have been pure refill casks, but like Sean said, it's nice to get something a little different. And you know, there's not a lot of companies that are out there doing that where they're actually blending two different casks together, even different vintages, because the market on the IB side is so driven by single cask. And this is a good example of how sometimes the sum is greater than the parts on their own. So
that's it. And I think just as I said earlier on, having the try to create things that don't exist otherwise, that you know, this is something that's completely different. I'm pretty sure you will have tasted the amazing whiskey one when we were in Paris last year, and it was quite distinctly different. It was richer, but even at that, it was still beautiful. It was still soft enough that it wasn't overpowering the distillate, and just Glentauchers. It's just lovely. Just really, I really like the distilleries. I like what they do. And yeah, and it's good that we get to play around with them class, and we use them for blinds, because then we get to play with the ones that we take their nose on, and they don't keep like a particular project anymore. So yeah, good. You ready? Move on to the next one.
yeah, go on to something a little different.
Okay, and now for something completely different. So we're going back to sherry. So I was saying earlier on that the ABV can really make the difference to the liquid. This one, this is one of the previous bottlings again, from the note of release statement, 10-year-old Mortlach. So this one, in actual fact, he took Angus took, sorry, I keep calling him Q. Angus took half of the cask and created the winter edition in 2022 of the Equinox and Solstice range. So we don't have any Equinox and Solstice tonight to taste, but just to kind of tell you briefly about those products. They're released 4 times a year in line with the Equinox and Solstice dates, and each whisky will be geared towards the season that it's been bottled in. So this one would have been the winter one on 2022. Last year's winter was an 11-year-old shade Milton Duff, which was just beautiful as well, lovely and rich and dark, and really in keeping with that time of year. Last year's summer edition, as an example, was a really bright, fruity orchard style bald layer, which was just stunning. And lovely for that time of year. It would have made lovely highballs, even just a really nice bright whiskey. The ABVs on the notable age statements will vary. The ABVs on the equinox and solstice will be a consistent 48.5%. And the concept behind that is that so that's another one when I was talking about, we have favourite drinking strengths. 48.5 is still a relatively hefty drinking strength, but just doesn't need anything done to it. And the idea behind that is that it's not overly complicated. You don't have to think about it too much. It's whiskey for drinking. We try and bring that in at a lower price point as well. And yeah, so the Mortlach that was used for that winter edition in 2022, half of the cask went to that, and half of the cask went to this one. So this whiskey was bottled just as I started at Decadent. And on a personal level, I'm not a massive fan of Mortlach. I know that's quite out there to say that. I'm not a massive fan. I find it too heavy and too big, and normally in sherry casks, and it's, you know, got these notes that I don't particularly like. However, I didn't like the equinox and solstice particularly. I thought it was very Mortlachy, and the things that I don't particularly like about it. Nothing wrong with the whiskey, but just my taste. And Angus always likes to prove me wrong to himself, but likes to prove me wrong that he'll find whiskey in the distilleries that I don't like, he'll find expressions that I do. And at our very first events that we attended in the UK, so Whisky Live Paris, where I had the opportunity to chat with Angus. So Angus and I have been friends for a long time. Whisky Live Paris was the very first whisky event that we had done as a company. Five whisky festivals, so no difference. You've got Whisky Live Paris, which is absolutely enormous. And then Five Whisky Festival, which is a tiny little, well, it's not tiny little, it's a great festival. Up in Fife, we went and did that one. And when I arrived that day, we just hands me glasses, you know, like, taste this and see what you think. And I nosed it, and I said, oh, that smells amazing. What is that? And he said, no, I just want you to taste it first, and then I'll talk to you about it. And I tasted it and loved it. And he said, well, there you go, that's Mortlach. And it's the other half of that cask. So we did manage to prove it on. But what it did prove is that I didn't like this at 10 degrees left. I do, however, like it at 58.5. So proof again that I really like high ABV whiskies. But this one I think is just, and I'll have some of that from this.
Julie, maybe it's just a trend that we've seen here in our market so far, but the NAS range of whiskeys, are they predominantly sherry wood?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Just a coincidence that that's what we have tonight, or mostly seen.
Yeah.
Just mostly, yeah.
So the Ben Nevis that we had wasn't sherried. It was, I believe, bourbon cast. I believe, I might be wrong. Again, that was before my time. So yeah, I suppose the 17-year-old was sherried, the 30-year-old was sherried, this one was sherried. Coincidence.
Fair enough. This is a cool, crazy big whiskey.
Isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I, you know, as I say, it's the style of Mortlach, that worm tub, heavy, oily, the thing that people love about Mortlach's a thing. You'll not necessarily like the whiskey that I do like, but that for me just kind of puts me off it. But this, I think at that higher ABV, this just packed with layers of flavour and layers of different things, just finding loads. And I think this will be an interesting one when we go back round to it, when we come back round to do the whiskies a second time.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I'm sure it'll evolve throughout the evening, but I would love to see the evolution in a bottle. Like, I see your bottle's about just a little past the halfway mark, and I bet
it's way down, actually. This one's way down.
I bet that was a cool journey.
We'll need to get a top, it looks like. So I said, you'll need to get a top up.
Oh,
You'll need to go to the office and get them to put a bit more in.
That's it. None of that left, unfortunately.
I love the nose on this. It is so
Yeah.
chocolatey. That meatiness is there, but it's really well balanced. Sean, you might remember this. Do you remember there was a woman named Rebecca who used to have a dessert shop in Inglewood, and she did some tastings with us back in the day, but she used to make this black flourless chocolate cake with like cayenne pepper infused in it. And like the nose on this is just reminding me of that. The palate's it's more like traditional meaty, slightly sulfury, not from the sherry, but just that slow, like sort of Mortlach profile in there. But curious for your take on this because it's quite beefy, but the chocolate balances it really well.
Yeah, like
think-
oh, sorry.
No,
It's not always one of my favorite distilleries. In fact, unless it is like kind of old enough to really adopt some of those really more fruitier tones, and maybe the barrel too, like it's just not something I often gravitate towards. There is some cool notes on it that I can appreciate though. Like I do, like, yeah, you're right. There, like the spirit sulfur is there for sure. But it doesn't really play as much in the meatiness for me as it does like there's like pencil shavings and shoe leather or like shoe polish and like on the nose, like the palate was a little bit more soupy, but not like, I don't know, like it was still pretty fruity. Like that cask is a monster. Like it's really like full and big and juicy and voluptuous. Like it's a cool dram.
The reference in the tasting notes of Dundee cake, I don't know if Dundee cake translates elsewhere in the world, but Dundee cake was basically like a heavy rich fruit cake, and then it's topped with almonds that are laid out in a pattern on the top. That's what Dundee cake is. So Christmas cake, I learned recently, doesn't translate in different places either. But wedding cake, just these really dense, fruity, fed cakes that have been fed with booze. Yeah, I think, and the dark chocolate as well has got that kind of almost that kind of tannic note that you get with really, really dark chocolates. It's almost drying. But yeah, I love this, and it really, I like to be surprised by distilleries that I don't like. So while I hate being truthful, I do quite like it as well.
Julie, we should try to dig up a sample of a Gordon MacPhail Mortlach cask we did, which was in bourbon, and it was like so tropical and so like there was faint traces of Mortlach to it, but like if you were tasting it blind, you'd never thought it was a Mortlach cask. So there are diamonds in the rough out there. This is for a 10-year-old Mortlach, this has got a nice balance to it. It's cool.
And I think this goes back to what I was saying about the notable age statements. So NAS normally in the whisky industry, no age statements, you turned it around and made it notable age statement, but it's, as I said earlier, a celebration of what has actually happened in that short lifespan for this one in particular. It was, so this one was refill hobbies first and then put into the fresh sherry, which was probably reasonable. I think just as you say, the bourbon cask Mortlach, I think I probably would like. I think it's just a combination of that warm, chubby, heavy spirit with sherry. I think is often too much for me, anyway.
Well, lovely. All right, where are we on to next, Julie?
Oh, next we're going to start to go into the smokeless side of the world. So we purchased the name Old Orkney Malt before, which was in days gone by was a blended whiskey. That was the branding for it. I think Clynelish. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not really up in that. That's where you need to just for these historical things. But Old Orkney Malt, this when we started bottling and identifying the Orkney style or the Orkney whiskey, we were bottling Orkney Sponge. So there were 3 versions of that we bottled. And then decided to go down the route of the Old Orkney malt and start using that brand. So this one's 13 years old. This one is, as I say, the first of the Old Orkney malts, the first filled bourbon cask of Orkney, and it's not still cask. So work that out. There's another Highland part. But there's only 2 to choose from. But yeah, this one is just, I don't know, I've actually got it. I don't know how to draw this as well. This, I think, is a lovely example of Highland Park. So we've taken that strength down again to 50%, and it's got that it should best at that strength. It's yeah. First of all, for this one, a bit sweeter. We're getting a little bit of smoke in there as well. So that Arcadian peat being the components being heather and bracken and not trees and vegetation and things like that. It's more woody and floral, the smoke that comes from Arcadian peats. Some of these I'm having to come back to remind me of it. But
Yeah,
I think
very creamy, some like as
Yes.
lots of people are chiming in here, loads of lemon tones coming through. So big citrus head on there. It also reminds me of like some candied ginger tones coming through in the nose.
yeah, I think it has got a lovely sweetness in the palate as well. I think it's actually quite, so he's not mentioned it here, but I think it's quite fruity for a Highland Park. The smoke's there, but I think it's quite fruity as well. This one of they're all very different. So bottom 3 Old Orkneys. But this one I think is it's just the one with the labels that he's gone, the label that we did this year was a kind of old traditional the old Manitoy rocks and a traditional labels, whereas now we've leaned into the OO. So the last one that we did was it was a hand drawing from our artist Pat. So we've got 2 artists that do our labels. So Rob Anderson is the person that does the majority of the Whisky Sponge labels, and Pat does different aspects for us, but she's just done beautiful. It's a beautiful Old Orkney, and it's a girl standing looking through these really, really long binoculars, and the binoculars come out to the double at the lens. Really nice that we're going to euros. But yes, this one. So I suppose I'm saying it's kind of as we're getting that. I think we get the mouthfeel of honey as well. It's not just the flavours of it.
The mouthfeel on this is just incredible. Like it's waxy, creamy. Like it tastes like something that's been in bottle for 20 years and is slowly rounding out over time. Like that's the crazy thing. Like you don't see, like we've seen a lot of Orkney bottlings, mystery Orkney bottlings. We all know where they're from. But I've not had many young Orkneys like this that have that sort of rounded, waxy, creamy, fruity profile. Sean, you're sort of nodding. You want to talk about this one?
I don't have too much to say, but yeah, like you kind of nailed it on the head for a lot of that. Like it really, even on the nose, like first thing, like the nose that didn't have like a ton of that peat, like it did have that kind of fresh minerality and nice citrusy zing, but the peat on the palate kind of like it really betrays what it is. Like it's not 13 by the palate whatsoever, at least not by those peating levels. I actually had some similarities between this and the old Islay blending stock. Like it's kind of oxidized a little, and it's very mellow with like it's like sweet tarts steeped in barley tea kind of thing. Pretty stunning bottle.
I like that tasting note, Sean. Sweet tarts tea, because it really does kind of nail that like fresh citrus.
Is that something from Here Comes Honey Boo Boo? Like you have that after you eat your sketty? Sorry, Julie, that's probably a really obscure reference and a bad one, but I couldn't resist.
That's okay. Mine are always more obscure than yours, so don't worry.
Well,
The Scottish ones I have.
this was referencing White Trash Americana, circa 12 years ago. Yeah, I think we can all agree this is a really interesting bottling. This is not like all the other Orkney bottlings we see. Like there's something fascinatingly different about this. So
I think it was a nice one to start the old Orkney malt range with for us. It's just a lovely example of a real well-matured Highland Park. Just as you say, 13 years old, it does palate as though it's a bit older than that. And that 50%, I think, is just perfect. It's a whiskey that I don't add water to. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, whether you add a couple of drops in. It will open it, but just figuring that's for me, the 50% is perfect.
I haven't been tempted to add water to any of these yet. So, but that is also par for the course. Well, you sort of hit on that, Julie. I know the last time we did one of these tastings with Angus, he talked about how, I don't know if it was most or at least a good portion of the bottlings you do are specifically bottled at a strength that's been chosen rather than cask strength. And that the reason was, it's not to say that he didn't like cask strength, but that he felt every whiskey kind of had its best point to drink it at.
Yeah, and he does play around with that, and gets it to. Because so again, when we're like there are occasions where he'll bring whiskies and and I'll taste them, and they'll give me the same whiskey at different strengths. And I think more recently we've had one of our Whisky malts. It was in Macmillan, 5-year-old Macmillan. That's beautiful. And it was a combination of 2 casks, and we tasted both the casks. And he went away and worked his magic on it, blended the 2 casks together, and just took the strength to a particular place that just is just a sweet spot. And I suppose that's where his skills and talent shine, because his palate is just fantastic. And I think, like, when in the past where I've spoken about independent bottling, I think it's always an amazing thing if you find an independent bottler that you identify. So if you go with whiskies that you traditionally know that you like, and you follow them and you taste what we produce at Decadent Drinks, you know that this is Angus's palate, and if it matches yours, then you can take a safe bet that if you go with a whiskey that you can take a punt on it, that it's going to be good. I think, there's a lot of differences out there, a lot of different approaches to whiskey, and different approaches to how whiskey's shown and the end result. So between finishing and blending and doing lots of different things, I think it's nice, and it's always a nice thing to find an independent bottler whose palate matches yours. And I've been very fortunate in my previous job. Ollie Chilton was our master blender, and he also has an amazing palate. And I was always happy to follow anything that he recommended, and I'm the same now with Angus.
All right, Julie, I think it's time to go to Bowmore, which I'm excited about because I love Bowmore. Yeah.
I'm excited for you all for this one, because this, for me, is exactly the way I want all Bowmore to taste. So this whiskey is the beautiful tropical fruity notes that is possible to find in Bowmore, and this is just a gorgeous example of it for you. So this whiskey has a bit of a story behind it. So it was in refill sherry for 15 years, and then it was taken out of cask. So my understanding is that it had been sold, taken out of cask, put into IBCs, and the sale fell through, so they put it back into wood again. So it came out of cask for a little while, so that just presses the pause button on the maturation. So in actual fact, it appears that it should be older. It's a 2003 cask at Bowmore, but it's actually only 18 years old because of that little space of time that it came out of cask. It came out of refill sherry, went back into refill sherry. And this, for me, is utterly delightful. I think it's a beautiful, just, I'm really gushy about this. This is, and I feel really lucky to get to talk about it quite a lot. So, for me, Bowmore was a distillery again, just my experience of it up until a particular time. I wasn't really digging it very much, but then I got to taste old Bowmore that had been distilled in the 60s and the 70s, and discovered this gorgeous world of tropical fruit Bowmores. And this one, I think, is just exactly that. It's pretty delicious. I think, well, I hope that I did announce it. Because if we don't, then like honestly goes on because it's perfect.
Yeah, don't worry, Julie. I don't think you oversold it. I think it's a beautiful whiskey, and it's so tropical and rich. Yeah, just mouth coating.
I love the fact that the kind of the big bit of the tropical note of it comes in the ultimate finish of it. So you've got the nose and the palate, and then you're tasting it, swirling it around your mouth, and you're tasting all these different flavors. And it's after you've swallowed the whiskey, it's almost like if you count to 3, then the tropical note comes.
Yeah.
Flooding, and it's just the finish of it is just exceptional for me. I think it's just outstanding.
Yeah.
Sean,
A bit of a mic dropper, I think.
Sorry, I've been busy in the chat here for a second. I don't have anything right now.
Andrew, have you tried it yet?
Yeah, it's lovely. It's got quite a nice sort of firm ashy smoke moving into the finish. Like a nice minerality to it, a little bit of wax. As you said, there's some nice tropical tones in there. It's a lovely Bowmore. I wasn't really sure what to expect about this one, partly because, and I mean, it's understandable why, like there's not a lot of mature independent bottlings of Bowmore out there, but like the price on this one was a little punchy, and so I was like, approaching it with I don't know, a fair bit of skepticism, but it's exceeded my expectations. It's a lovely bottling. So
that's the slight downside is the price of this one. But just as you say, Bowmore's not a distillery that you see bottled quite as readily, particularly in the high teens from independent bottlers. So it's that's a nice one. So this was a cask of whiskey that we purchased from Signature. So you'll see on the labels, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this in small large, but we'll see at the bottom of the label that it's from the warehouses of Signature Vintage. And you don't get the UK stamp, so this means nothing, but the UK stamp's got a white circle around it that denotes Signature with it all. And then in a few places on the bottom. But this is one that getting the opportunity to bottle a Bowmore, getting the opportunity to bottle an 18-year-old Bowmore, in particular the one as big as this was just an opportunity that we couldn't miss out on. It's just divine.
I don't know if you noticed in the chat, but Doug is saying if only someone was building a distillery to try to replicate 60s Bowmore ... in Kythe. So
well, if there's going to be anybody doing that in Kythe, in that part of the world, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Are there multiple new distilleries opening in Kythe, or no? I'm kidding.
No.
Yeah.
No, in Kythe's not a place. It's a place out there. It's and it's stuff. It's I'm so excited for them to see how this goes, because they're all so enthusiastic and to say that they're geeky about whiskey is just an absolute understatement. So the desire to produce liquids that with the flavors that they're going to be going for and the style that they're going to be going for is just going to be such a delight to watch unfold over the years. I'm excited for them and excited for us as well to see that and get the opportunity to have these whiskies over the years. Hopefully I do it since kind of long enough to see the good stuff. Are there any more thoughts on the Bowmores?
I don't think so. I think perhaps we should head to the further southern shore of Islay.
The final. So this one is coming in a punchy 60% ABV. Another one that we're not permitted to see the moon of the distillery on the label. But if you know your Islay distilleries, you'll be able to see quite clearly that our veg, that the sponges sitting in the water next to. This took down by 4 degrees actually to 60%, so it was a good bit higher than this. 14 years old, it's 64%, it's just nuts. But it's a lovely, just another really gorgeous example of a really lovely distillery on Islay. Ardbeg, they're producing some terrific stuff, but if you look back at this older Ardbegs, and a day gone by, it was quite something. And I think when you taste whiskies like that now, they would have been underrated at the time, and they wouldn't have been used as single malts at the time, and they would have been getting put into blends and such like. But so I'm just like reference to recalling some 1970s Ardbeg. Refill sherry this time, but still quite a lot of sherry influence on it. So this is another one of these subsections of the sponge veg that I was talking about. So Islay Sponge, where just the Kildalton, a Bowmore actually. It's a Bowmore coming, which is going to be part 4. It's
So is it when you can't declare, is the Islay Sponge, you do that when you can't declare which distillery it's from?
No, not necessarily. So the other Islay sponges, we've had a Bunnahabhain, we've had a Port Charlotte, we've had that's it. Bunnahabhain and Port Charlotte. And this is number 3. No, it's just when Angus feels that we should showcase it as being Islay Sponge and not necessarily under the Whisky Sponge label. There's right and reason, and then there's different aspects of the sponge. So no, it's not in particular that we can't name the distillery. So there'll be a variety of different reasons, but Ardbeg in particular don't sell their whiskey now to independents. So when you're getting your hands on it, it'll be unnamed. And you'll see that a lot. So Lafroig you'll see coming through being called Williamson, and that's a trading name for Lafroig. You see at Bunnahabhain, we've got a variety of different names that we use. One of which is Ardnahoe for it, which we can obviously not call it. And in the bottom, we can't call it Ardnahoe. It's like an Ardnahoe distillery now. So different trading names, and it just depends. It depends when it's been released, who it's been released from. And if they're not permitted to call it, if it's named Kildalton on all the paperwork that they have, that we have to call that. But obviously we understand that is the trading name of Ardbeg.
Yeah. So Jeff's asking the question, you can't say what it is, but Ardbeg would be unhappy if you told people that this was Ardbeg. Listen, Jeff, Salma Hayek would be very upset because you'd be damaging one of LVMH's treasured brands. It's interesting. I've not tried a lot of young, this is going to sound really terrible, but I've not tried a lot of young Ardbeg from the 70s. I've been unusually fortunate to try like 74s and 77s and 78s, to be honest, and like Lord of the Isles, things like that. But I've not tried a lot of young Ardbegs from the 70s, so I don't really have a good baseline. But it is like there's like so much licorice on this. It's very tarry. It doesn't remind me of modern Ardbeg.
No. And is that a good thing or?
Yeah. Sean, do you want to chime in? But if only because like I kind of feel like a lot of what we're seeing from them now is younger than they want us to think, and a lot more raw. And some people love that peat, but it doesn't have as much balance. So the last few years have been kind of, as someone who loves Ardbeg, have been a bit frustrating. But Sean, I'm interested for your take on this one, because you've been around the shop now for what, 12 years? You've been around for a lot of Ardbeg days. What do you think about this?
Totally unpopular opinion, but I actually like came to the conclusion not too long ago that I don't think I like Ardbeg as much as I thought I did. Not to say that I don't like them, but like everyone's like so wild about it now. Like eventually I was like tasting enough to like, you know what? I haven't had it. Like I'm not having things that are wowing me here. Having said that, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, but I rarely get anything farmy out of Ardbeg, but I'm getting a nose full of manure on this thing, which is like totally up my alley. Nowadays, a little less before, but now I'm digging it. Pretty neat. And the palette I was getting was very very herbaceous, like almost like junior mint herbaceous, like candied mint dark chocolate. Yeah.
And maybe junior mint's left out in the sun. Harmony, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I was just saying in the chat, Sean, not unpopular. I'm not a huge Ardbeg fan. But I like it. It's just
Harmony,
I don't buy
we're
them.
Ardbeg Embassy.
I mean, they're my favorite embassy bottler. I like the minerality that it has. I like it feels different than any other Ardbeg that I've ever had. And I've not had old Ardbeg. And I don't think I've ever had an independent Ardbeg before. So this is a pretty cool experience. Yeah, there's minerality and like tarry ashiness to it. I'm happy that I'm not trying to pick up some sort of like smoked fish note, because that's just not my jam.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I love Ardbeg. I love the cut of the jib. So I really like visiting the distillery. I love all the people and where they are, and all of these things I think play a part in how you feel about certain whiskies. But like that, you want to taste the new release and taste different things. And well, I do love the distillery. I do love the whiskey that they produce, but I think sometimes I think the release one that was I can't remember what Ardbeg do. I can't remember what they called the Ardbeg do, but it was in rum casks.
Oh, rum.
This Caribbean style, and I just didn't get it at all. Like
it was drum. And the reason I know that is I was in Japan for that Ardbeg day. So, which was mental.
Yeah.
Actually, I've been there twice for Ardbeg Day of all things. The Japanese do Ardbeg Day properly, I have to say.
Yeah.
Even when the whiskey's not what you want it to be, like you have a good time.
Yeah, well, this is it. My experience of the Ardbeg Day has always been on Islay, and just like that, you have a fabulous time. And I think there's a lot of time that whiskey experience, when it's completely different, when you're standing in a distillery and you taste whiskey and you think it's the best thing that you've ever tasted, and you buy a bottle and then you take it home and open it in your house, no longer with the people you were with, no longer in the environment of the distillery, no longer all that atmosphere and the person talking about it and, you know, all the romance of everything. And you get it home and you taste it and you think, what is that? You know, that's not what I had. I don't, but it does play a part in it. So the magic of Islay is definitely plays a big part in it. I love Ardbeg, but just like that, I do understand that there's loads, like I've said it tonight about Mortlach. It might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't like it. I just, you know, and people rave about it and go to the ends of the earth to get the bottles. A wee bit like Macallan as well. I'm not massively, you know, I would the Springbank's my favourite. I would walk to the ends of the earth to get Springbanks, but everybody's got their own, don't they?
Yeah. I think my problem might be, Julie, that I've never been to Islay, so I need to go and
it is
build
something
that
that needs to be
relationship.
rectified.
But my favorite Ardbeg though has always been the Corey Brecken, so
Okay.
it's a big one.
Mine's always been the Ubadal, actually. That's of those ones. To be fair, my favourite one's the 1974, but you know, how often do we get to play with that?
Those 74s are gorgeous. Harmony, I think I only have one left. When I crack my Ardbeg Corey Vrecken Committee Edition, which is different from the regular Corey Vrecken because there was a higher ratio of French oak. Like it's insane. I'll make sure you can try it because it is like insane. It's like Corey.
They're normally higher ABV as well, aren't they? The kind of series.
Higher ABV too. It was insane.
Yeah.
All right, it's time for the speed round. Now before we do that, Judy, or sorry, Julie, do you have any more slides, or was that the last slide?
That was me.
Oh,
there you go. That's all my details. If anyone has any questions for me, bearing in mind it's my question answering skills might not be quite on point at 3:20 in the morning, but if you've got anything, you can always drop me a line to kind of that information and let me know.
So I think what we'll do now, and like we're gonna have a vote, and we're gonna try to wrap this up because we're sensitive to the fact that it's a school night and school morning technically for you here. So Harmony and Sean, we'll just keep it to the three of us here, but we're gonna bang this out. We're going speed round. Now, Sean, you're saying no, you can't do it, or you okay? He's gonna do it. But we're gonna start with Harmony. We're going back to the NAS Blended Malt. Harmony, NAS Blended Malt.
It is so fruity now. Like that sherry is kind of settled down, and it's got more kind of stone fruit and rich.
It's an overripe bowl of stone fruit right now.
Totally, yeah, and leaning kind of into like jujubes. I think.
I love me a good bag of wet jujubes.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. There are a lot of candy, a lot like this is so much different than when we poured it. That's so crazy. Yeah,
but the smoke on the palate now is much more prominent than it was initially. There's more smoke. There's more smoke.
Yeah,
Lovely.
it's like that.
Do you get it on the second sip? You know, like you're talking about.
It's really prominent.
Really
now.
there.
Really prominent.
It's like we have two Highland Parks in the lineup. Like,
okay.
I'm getting more like plasticine notes on there now too, like some, I don't know, I don't even know how to describe that. Minerality, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, there's a nice minerality. All right. Candlekitty. It's a bit more muted on the nose now. Like that waxiness
very
is
delicate.
there.
It's very delicate.
I'm getting more wax than I did for sure.
Still tasty. It's still floral, still fruity, but it's very much on that drier, not quite sweet side. It's a much more dry, waxy, paraffin-y profile, but still a lovely, fun bottling. Yeah. And fresh. Harmony?
Yeah, I would say it's dry flowers, but not to the offense of like a soapy potpourri. But I love the waxiness that you can smell that richness. And it's like waxed lemons.
See the dried flowers, but not overly floral. For me, that's like almost like wicker when you get like the smell of the inside of a wicker basket. That
Mm.
I get that quite a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We call those shopping baskets at Kensington Wine
yeah,
Market.
yeah,
We have
yes.
30-year-old wicker shopping baskets that we still use. As you do. Glentauchers, 18.
Softer now than it was the first time.
It's like real, like big time, like caramel chews on the nose.
I was getting like, what's that English dessert trifle? Is that what it is with like sponge cake and
Oh,
custard
like
and jelly?
Scottish trifle. Yeah.
Getting a creamy note in it now as well.
Funny
Yeah.
you say that, Sean, because on the palate, and Julie, you might be one of the only people who gets this. I'm getting like Clootie dumpling on the palate now,
Okay.
which is not
Yeah.
something most people on this side of the ocean will be familiar with.
Both understands.
Mm.
So yeah.
And oh man, but like still some nice tropical fruits, a little bit underripe, but some what are those like banana plantains, some plantain notes in there.
Mm. There's a,
What's that?
there was a note there in the chats from Sammy, Sean, I get berries and cream now, which evokes trifle.
There you go.
We've had clover beeswax as well. Yeah. It's pretty special, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So
Very
Mortlach, which we forgot to put on the label. Sorry, by the way, it just says NAS Speyside. I mean, it's not wrong.
No,
It is correct. 10-year-old.
10-year-old Mortlach.
This has not changed that much.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a negative. It's a young whiskey. I don't expect it to change quite as much, but it
So
is
much.
seems to have changed the least of the first four.
Okay.
First responder Jay in the chat says it's more plasticky on the nose now.
Ooh, that's a tasting note Brian loved to throw out there. To me, like it's got this really like kind of funky, farmy cinnamon thing going on.
Okay.
Like cinnamon hearts, but like again, like I had that note before in like a wet cardboard bag, and someone said maybe the bag had whiskey in it. I don't know, but it was like a wet bag of cinnamon hearts.
Hmm.
And cardboard. It was a wet cardboard bag of cinnamon hearts. Sean?
The sherry smells and tastes a little older, like maybe it's an older cask than it was now. Like it's kind of sat around. The really vibrant notes have blown away. It's still not something I'm super wild about, but I can definitely still appreciate what's going on.
Yeah, well, you're right. It reminds me of some of those, like I know, and we've got Igor watching and chiming in from time to time. It reminds me of some of those like Valencian Mallet sherry casks, sort of like those older, mustier profile casks.
It reminds me if you like left a cigar out in the rain.
Not done that before, but
Like
then again,
tobacco.
Yeah.
so
An unlit one, I take it.
Yeah, unlit, yeah, because there's not a lot of smoke on this.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
all right, Orkney. Julie, are you sampling some of these or just like a chosen dram tonight? What's your method?
So I did sample. I had so I had sips of the 17, the Mortlach. I've still got a little bit of the Bowmore though. I'm not throwing that one away. I'm gonna finish that.
Don't want to
I had some Orkney as well. I love this. Like I just love this drum. I think it's beautiful. How
This
has it
Orkney's great.
how's it come on in the glass?
It's definitely evolved. It's going into more of like a citrusy, honeyed profile.
Okay.
It's closer now on the nose to what I would normally expect from Highland Park, but not. It's still lovely.
It almost feels a bit drier on the finish than it did the first time for me.
Yeah.
But maybe that's because we're just going so quickly, but
Sean?
I agree with you. Yeah, the nose doesn't seem like it's changed quite a bit. The palate, like you're right. Like I agree with Harmony. It's a little bit more. Well, it's also more muted on the palate. I think it's not to say that it can't survive in the glass, although it has been like an hour and a half now. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's still got that OBE though. It's not quite as strong as it was when we first sampled it, but it's still there. Which is crazy to think. Like, I want to know how you can do that with a young whiskey. How do you give it that sort of profile? Fascinating.
It's choosing good casks, isn't it? And getting
suppose.
the sweet spot of the ABV correct.
Or
I
is there
think
like,
is
are you like so in wine, I don't know if he's still a thing. There used to be this wine consultant named Michel Roland, and he would go around the world and people would pay him like $100,000 to come and try their wine. And every
Right.
single time he'd be like, it needs more micro oxygenation. So maybe Michel Roland and Angus had a chat and there's like
That's
micro
it.
oxidation happening, and
Maybe
I don't know. We don't.
cask whisperer.
Oh, Bowmore is still lovely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So much honey on that.
As it was sitting there, it was like when I first picked it up, it had a big old whiff of hickory sticks, like a fresh bag of hickory sticks.
Totally.
I just adore the finish of it. I just love the tropical fruit note that you get from it. I just think it's so.
Palette. And there's like this leather, like this like really soft leather glove tone. It's pretty. And
man, with Bowmore, it's one of those things. There's a lot of this. Well, not a lot. There's a few distilleries that you love to hate. This one I hate to love.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. Over the time, my experience with it for a long time was the floral Bowmore, like that really violety, floral, perfumey flavor, and it was just something that didn't appeal to me at all. But I think in recent years, certainly it's changed considerably.
so Julie, now that you're no longer with Elixir, tell us how you really feel about Islay Violets. I'm just kidding. You don't have to answer that question.
No, I'll be.
I actually liked that bottling. I don't mind it. I have had Bowmore bottlings that were way over the top, like sweet lavender. I love finding traces of it in the spirit. I don't get any in this Bowmore.
No.
Recently did a cask
in this one
with berries from 97 that has a bit, and it's just an accent. It's just part of the picture. But there were definitely some early 80s Bowmores that were over the top. Well, but that's the weird thing about it, though, is there's some of them that I still like.
But people love it and people seek it out, like there's whiskey for everybody. That's definitely
Like
true.
Salford casks for Germans and
But the Islay Violets as an example was one, and I was quite honest about that when I worked there as well. I didn't like it, but I loved doing that one blind with people because it was interesting for the price perception when people are influenced by how much something is. So I would, we would taste it blind, and there would be a few people that were just, no, not for me. And then you would tell them how much it was. And then they would change their mind and say, oh, no, actually, when I come back to it, it's okay.
everything's relative and unique. And
of course.
Personal
and
taste.
for people who don't know the particular expression we're talking about, it was expensive. So,
It was, but at the same time, like independent
for what it was,
expensive for a while. Like it's not. Anyway, we almost forgot we didn't speed round the Kildalton. Sean, do you want to start? Are you still there? Harmony, why don't you start since Sean...
It's so meaty now, like smoked meats, with like a little bit of sweetness and spices and
It's got that lime, like I often get like a big hit of lime from a lot of Ardbegs. It's like someone's taken a pile of limes and like doused them in gasoline and lit them on fire. Because there's like a little hint of petrol or something in there too. The poll is up and running. Sean, did you have a final thought on the Kildalton?
Yeah, it was a good point on the petrol. Like all the manures kind of faded away over that time. Maybe I inhaled it all, and who knows. But I didn't taste it though.
So the poll is up. There's only 5 of you who have not yet voted. So you have correct that 4. We'll we'll quickly review the results, and then we're gonna let Julie either start her day or end her previous day.
Definitely end. I'm definitely ending my day. I stayed up.
You're a legend, Julie. So for those
Oh,
who don't know, normally we do things like this at 5 p.m. Long story short, because of dates and conflicts, Julie agreed to do it at 7. So she's an absolute trooper and rock star for sticking up for this. Julie, before we like reveal the results and before we kind of wrap things up, any things you want to tease us about what's coming down the line in the future from Decadent Drinks? Igor is
So
shaking his finger. I think that means he's saying you can't share.
I've not to tell them, Igor, will I just keep it a secret? Okay.
It's like, I think that's like, yeah, that's the Larry David. Yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah. We all have her
So
email.
an exciting one that we've got coming up. So I am delighted because just as I said earlier on, Springbank is at the absolute root of my soul. And I'm going to be in Campbelltown this year for the Campbelltown Malts Festival and doing a Springbank tasting. And one of the things that I'm going to be sampling is the third Whisky Sponge, which is going to be a Springbank. But I will just leave you with that and not tell you very much more about it.
I want to give people too much FOMO, like beforehand, pre-FOMO.
Say again?
Well, it's FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Whenever you say the word Springbank, like people like jump to attention. It'd be like when I say cheese around my dog. Like they're like they're jonesing for it the second you do that.
That's it, absolutely. So the it'll be another pretty special one. It'll be in the cognac glass bottles again. It'll be expensive because of what it is. But 90 Springbank that'll be in sherry, and it's just divine. So that's exciting. We've got that coming up. We've got a nice Bowmore coming up as well. Yeah, there's a lot of things in the pipeline.
Very cool. Well,
This is Igor just hearing for the first time what I've got coming up in the next quarter. But
Igor probably doesn't want me to say, but he's got a cask coming, so you know that's exciting. That's coming down the line as well too. Yeah. Igor, you want me to tell them like what it is or not? Is it one of the? Yeah, he's got a Glen Grant cask coming. So something to look forward to.
I'm so excited.
I'm going to share the results here. Not entirely. Actually, it is kind of surprising. Old Orkney whiskey edges out Kildalton and Bowmore. I'm surprised, like also kind of happy. I think that's a cool result. The Mortlach was in tough company, to be fair. What do we get on the second? Oh, the Mortlach, everybody gets some votes, so that's good. The Bowmore has a solid second place finish, which as a Bowmore fan, I respect. Well, listen, Julie, thank you very much for agreeing to do this and staying up so late for us. As I mentioned previously, 2 of the whiskeys are only available to people who took part in the tasting. I will be sending out an email tomorrow with details on that. The others are all available until we sell out of them, or maybe Igor's got a case or 2 of one of them left, in which case they might last longer than that. Check those out. Don't forget, we've got our special Craigellachie Walter bottling, which has been really well received. More than half sold out. Lots of cool things. Sean, Harmony, thank you for this. Julie, once again, thank you very much. Everyone, thank you for taking part in tonight's tasting. I hope
thank you.
And if we missed something or you want some more info, send me a note, or you can contact Julie or Igor or whomever. But thanks everybody. Have a great night, and we'll talk soon.
See you soon. Cheers.